om met die boere te gesels.
We have more than 260
for GRIMME-based
own agenda.
Nou ja, dit is sommer weer lekker om met die boere te gesels en my hart gaan uit vir die boere as ek so kyk na die bek-en-klouseer en alles wat die boere tref, van droogtes na baie snaakse besluite rondom water en al daai klas van ding, en dan sukkel die sagte kommoditeite ook nog. Maar ek gaan twee grafieke bespreek vandag. Ek gaan beslis kyk na die korn grafiek. Ons witmielies wil net nie aan die gang kom nie. Die groot vlak daar op die maartkontrak is R3,700, maar hy wil net nie. Hy kom net elke keer daar, dan kom hy terug. Hy was laasweek Vrydag was hy by R3,700, onmiddellik stoom verloor daar. Maar kyk 'n bietjie wat gebeur met die koringprys en onthou die Amerikaanse dollar is eintlik besig om stelselmatig te verswak, maar die koringprys verswak nie daarmee nie, hy versterk, is net hier by ons, waar die rand lekker sterk is, maar ons pryse val letterlik in die grond. Nou kyk 'n bietjie hier, hoër laagtepunte, daar's 'n laagtepunt, daar's 'n hoër laagtepunt, daar's 'n hoër laagtepunt, nog 'n hoër laagtepunt. Ons is al die pad terug by die 50 dae bewegende gemiddelde, en vir my, vir die boere, is hierdie die sleutel, want dan kan ons amper sê, ons begin konsolideer bo die 50 dae bewegende gemiddelde, en dit sal wees bo $430 op die kop. Nou, hulle praat van per bushel, so kom ons sê $430 per bushel, kan dalk net die teken gee vir 'n hoër hoogte, maar dan ten minste begin ons bo die 50 dae bewegende gemiddelde konsolideer, en ek het so idee, die rand begin vir ons wys al die pad, laat hy hierso vaskop tussen 15,90, 16, my belangrike vlak is R16,08, dan kan ons miskien daarvanaf 'n bietjie verswakking sien, en dit behoort die koringprys op te tel. So vir boere, baie beslis, hou die Amerikaanse ene dop, dit is bo $430,48 moet hy op, en ongelukkig deur, wanneer hierdie lyntjie weer 'n weerstand word, ek is al amper te bang om vir die arme boere te wys, waar kan hy afgaan, want hierdie prys het nog net teleurgestel, onder hierdie vlakkie van $420,84, kan ons afwaartse tendens sien weer in die koringprys. Kom ons kyk 'n bietjie na die koringprys, en dit is duidelik vir ons, ek wil 'n bietjie kyk na die UK wheat, en die rede hoekom ek daarvoor wil kyk is, baie van ons koring word uitgevoer, maar kyk nou, ons koringprys is onder druk, maar hulle prys is net so onder druk, inteendeel, die grafiek lyk baie dieselfde, en kyk 'n bietjie, daar's die afwaartse tendens, hy's behoorlik gevestig, maar kyk waar lê die sleutel lê hierdie klein venstertjie, en ek wil hom eintlik vir die boere intrek, hy kan dalk nog sluit, so dit wys jou, daar kan dalk nog swakker pryse wees by koring, maar ek het al deur die jare gesien, jy het net 'n klein bietjie van 'n skok in die wêreldmarkte nodig, dan begin dit aan die gang kom, en daar's die venstertjie, hierdie venstertjie lê nog oop, tussen 166,06, onthou, dis nou Britse pond, en op die kant na bo, 1,65, so ek het so idee, hierdie 50 dae bewegende gemiddelde lê teen daai weerstandslyn, as ons net bo daai 50 dae bewegende gemiddelde kan kom, kan ons ten minste sien dat daar momentum na bo kan plaasvind, so ek sal positief raak, wanneer die prys bo 168 beginne beweeg, en beslis daar, bo 168,75, dan weet ek die rigting is reg. Op die oomblik lyk dit maar net vir my asof hy sukkel. Tendens is af, daar's 'n venstertjie wat wag wat gesluit moet word. So kom ons hoop dit gebeur, laat dit opgaan, en dan uiteindelik vir ons plaaslike boere 'n bietjie van, kan ons sê, net guns skep, sodat hulle daar aan die gang kan kom. Nou ja, besoek gerus ons webtuiste www.fransdeklerk.com vir meer inligting, en ons kuier weer.
Ons verwelkom weer vandag vir Dr. Danie Odendaal in die ateljee en hy gaan 'n bietjie lig skyn op die huidige bek-en-klouseer-situasie. Danie, baie welkom hier by ons.
Baie dankie. Daar skyn 'n baie sterk lig op die bek-en-klou.
Ja, omtrent.
Ek kan dit net in detail vir jou vertel wat ons in die veld sien.
Kom ons begin daar. Hoe lyk die tragedie wat in die veld afspeel ten opsigte van bek-en-klou?
Ek dink tot 'n maand terug, miskien 2 weke terug, het min mense besef. Ek praat van die gewone publiek daar buite, wat is besig om te gebeur. Dit het nou eers regtig nuuswaardig geraak as gevolg van 'n klomp berigte wat daar is. En ons het net gisterand gehoor, ons het nou 'n noodtoestand wat afgekondig is daar rondom. Ons het bek-en-klou gesien beweeg. Onthou, hierdie spesifieke uitbreek het in 2021 begin in Mei maand. Baie stadig bo in KwaZulu-Natal, niemand daar regtig aangesteer nie. En toe het hy so in 2023 in die kommersiële areas in Newcastle gegaan. En toe spring hy na Gauteng toe. Toe Gauteng inkom en hy begin in die kommunale areas ingaan wat langs groot voelkraal is. En die eerste groot voelkraal kry dit. Die grootste voelkraal in die land. Toe is dit baie bekend. Maar wat verder gebeur het is, daar was 'n uitbreek gewees net voor dit in die Oos-Kaap die vorige jaar. En toe het ons nou vir die eerste keer gesien hoe ongelooflike groot welsynsprobleem dit is. Onthou, in so 'n melkkudde, as die koeie daar agteruit gaan, virustas hulle aan, hulle kloue gaan los van hulle, kry verskriklike mastitis, hulle kan nie meer loop nie, hulle kan nie meer vreet nie, jy kan nie melk uit hulle uitkry nie, want ons verskriklike letsels op die spene. Het ons eers agtergekom dat dit eintlik 'n melkery vernietig. Hierdie siekte vernietig 'n melkery. Die verliese per 1000 koeie is so R5 miljoen. Nou dit is ekonomiese verliese, want daar is welsyn. En toe het ons dat hierdie siekte sien sprei deur die land en ons kon niks daaraan doen nie. Ons bewegingsbeheer in Suid-Afrika is amper, dit bestaan amper nie. Want dis al wat jy, nee, is nie al nie, daar's baie hulpmiddels. Ek het 'n opname hier gedoen by julle 4 maande gelede en gesê, ons moet die enstof hê, want dis al wat ons het. So, ons het hom nou gesien loop, reg deur Noord, Wes, Suid, en nou het hy gespring na die Wes-Kaap toe. Hulle is in vir 'n ongelooflike probleem, daar is reusagtige melkuddes daar. En as dit daar ingaan, die verliese wat daar gaan wees, uit intussen tyd van die Noordwes af oorgegaan, en nou in die laaste provinsie gegaan. So in Kuruman is hy nou ook in die Noord-Kaap. So ons het hom voor ons oë sien loop, en ons kon eintlik niks daaraan doen nie, want ons nie enstof gehad nie.
Daar is nou sprake van enstof wat binnekort in die land gaan wees. Wat is die huidige stand van daai sake?
So elke dag hoor ons aan 'n storie. Dat 2 internasionale maatskappye na Suid-Afrika toe gekom, uit hulle eie uit. Die staat hulle nie gaan haal nie. Dolwet is deur 'n veearts na toe gebring, invoerpermit aansoek gedoen, 2,5 maande later het hy eers die permit gekry, so dit het alles uitgestel. Ons verwag die laaste week van Februarie. Is daar 1,5 miljoen doses hier, wat al gaan help, want dit gaan net so gebruik word. Die een van Argentinië, van Biogenesis af, sou eintlik hierdie week geland het, as die permitte geteken was. Toe is dit uitgestel na volgende week toe, en nou hoor ons, dit gaan nog uitgestel word na volgende week Vrydag toe. Maar dit kon nie gewees het. Kyk, ek praat met hulle gereeld, toe in Suid-Afrika was die eerste keer, was ek 3 dae saam met 'n baie goeie verhouding met hulle. En op die einde van die dag, die gesloer met die seksie 21 permit, het die land ongelooflik baie gekos. Okay, maar hulle is hopelik volgende Vrydag hier, en dan het ons 'n basis om mee te begin, so 2,5 miljoen dosisse, en as alles dan regloop daarna, gaan ons in Maart maand nog 'n 5 en nog 'n 5 miljoen, 10 miljoen dosisse kry. En dan begin die uitrol van die enstof werklik.
Okay. Van die os op die jas, ek wil nie politiek praat nie. Hoekom het dit 2,5 maande gevat om daai permit geteken te kry?
Ek kan absoluut nie vir jou antwoord gee nie. Daar's een veearts by SAPRA. Ja. So SAPRA is die beheerliggaam wat medisyne beheer. In hierdie geval, onthou is nie geregistreerde enstowwe in Suid-Afrika nie, behalwe die een wat hulle bekendgestel het van onderste poort laasweek, wat hulle 12.000 dosisse van het. So jy moet 'n ongeregistreerde produk invoer en daar's redelik streng reëls daar rondom. Maar as ons verstaan in die krisis wat die land is, ek kan nie dink dat ons meer as 'n dag of 2 kan vat nie. As daar fokus is, daar's een veearts daar, as hy nie opgewasse voel om hom af te teken genoeg inligting, daar was die taakspan, daar's 4 spesialiste op die taakspan, wat na die spesifieke enstof gekyk het en hom goedgekeur het. Dis eintlik ondenkbaar dat daai permit 2,5 maande gevat het die eerste een, en hierdie een wag ons nog steeds vandag vooruit. Miskien as ons die uitstap is hy vandag geteken. Maar dit mag nie gebeur nie. Dit is groot verliese vir die boere, net daai eerstap. Daar's een enkele veearts by Sabra. In so 'n krisis, kry die geld, stel nog mense aan, stel 'n paneel aan, 'n buitepaneel wat die goed kan evalueer, maar doen dit in 'n dag of 2, ons is in die middel van 'n krisis.
Ek dink die belangrikste vraag op almal se lippe is, wat gebeur dan nou sodra die enstowwe hier aangeland het? Wat moet gebeur? Is hierdie dinge in plek? Want as ek jou nou reg verstaan, moet ons wag vir al die enstof om hier te kom, voordat dit uitgegee word aan die boere. So as jy sê die uitrol daarvan, verstaan ek verkeerd.
Dis daarmee so nie.
Okay.
So die uitgee aan die boere, dit is nog glad nie uitgemaak. Glad nie. Daar's nog nie eers reëls daar rondom en spesifieke logistiek hoe dit gaan gebeur nie. Al wat in plek is ons ou reël. Onthou voorheen het net staatsveeartse die enstof gekry. So as daai eerste klomp enstof kom, gaan dit na die provinsies toe. Na die provinsiale direkteurs het hulle bestelling ingesit, so elke provinsie gaan daai enstof kry. En die hoeveelheid enstof wat hulle benodig om binne-in en rondom 'n uitbreke te gebruik, is soveel dat hulle omtrent daai hele eerste bestelling gaan opneem. So daai hele eerste bestelling gaan in my gedagtes, en ek kan verkeerd wees, deur die staat opgeneem word, en eers in Maart maand, wanneer ons die groot hoeveelhede kry, gaan die privaat veeartse moet ingetrek word om dit op plaasvlak te kry, voorkomend. Onthou, dan raak dit voorkomend. Dan gaan ons spuit nie in 'n uitbreek nie, maar onthou, die minister het gesê ons gaan die hele land spuit, president het dit gisterand herhaal, en daai uitrolproses moet presies uitgewerk word. Op hierdie stadium, en ek het gisterand 'n vergadering gehad met al die veeartse in die land, daar was 120 ouens op die vergadering, veeartse, wat ek 1 keer 'n maand doen, kon ek nie vir hulle sê, hoe lyk die reëls? Hulle moet nou aansoek doen om bemagtig te word, autoriteit, om authorized te word, wat 'n proses is deur die staat, en dan, wat is die reël? Hoe bestel jy vir jou boer? Hoe rapporteer jy dit? En dan die heel belangrikste, wie gaan dit op die plaas spuit? Wat nie uitgemaakte saak is nie, want kyk, 'n veearts gaan nie beeste spuit nie. Veearts spuit nie beeste nie. Ons behandel individuele beeste, maar ons is nie werkers wat loop en beeste spuit nie. Ons is heeltemal te duur daarvoor in die eerste plek. Daar is veeartse wat van hulle groot boere dit sal doen. My gedagte is, en ons werk daaraan, vanaf 'n veeartsnetwerk kant af, sit ek die hele proses by mekaar om te sê, wat gebeur van agter af vorentoe? Wat gaan op die plaas gebeur? Dan na die veearts toe, dan na die verspreider toe. Opleiding van die ouens wat gaan moet inent. Of het die bestuurder is, en of het die werker is, die veewagter is, moet opgelei word. En dan moet daar 'n oorsigrol van die veearts wees, wanneer daar ingespuit word, en sê, doen hulle dit reg. En as dit gedoen is, volgens 'n merklys, volgens my moet dit aangaan.
Op daai noot, watter belangrike faktore is daar rondom die fisiese toediening van die enstof, waarvan produsente moet weet? Met ander woorde, hoe moet dit reg toegedien word om werklik effektief te wees?
Ja, onthou dis enstof, ons behou die koue ketting. Gelukkig hierdie is 'n geaktiveerde enstof, so hy's nie uiters sensitief vir dit nie. Maar ons wil altyd die koue ketting behou tot daar by die drukgang. So daar wil ons altyd hê, dan moet 'n tafel wees, dan moet 'n sambreel of 'n gazebo wees, jy werk nie op die grond nie, jy werk nie agter op die bakkie nie. Jou spuite moet reg wees, hierdie is 'n inspuiting wat in die spier moet ingaan. Nou, so dis heeltemal anders, dis nie jou kort naaltjies wat jy gebruik onder die vel nie, is 'n lang naald wat in die spier moet ingaan, so dis heeltemal anders, die beeste moet reg gepak word, jy kan nie in die spier ingaan, en die beest spring vorentoe, en hy slaan die beest voor hom, en hy breek die naald binne-in af nie. So, Ons baie keer kan ons in die bout inspuit, diere wat nie nou geslag gaan word nie, ons verkies om in die nek in te spuit, maar die bout kan gebruik word, is eintlik baie makliker. So daar is 'n opleidingsproses rondom dit. En dan wil jy elke bees met die volle dosis kry. So in daai opleidingsproses leer ons die ouens om te kyk, is hy vol getrek, van die een bees na die volgende, as jy klaar gespuit het jy alles ingekry, die ruil van naalde, al daai tipe van goed, en seker te maak dat daar nie ligborrels inkom en jy net die helfte van die dosis spuit nie, is alles goed wat ek persoonlik in 'n video gaan omskep, vir die veeartse, wat er gebruik word. Ek wag eintlik net vir die enstof, dat ek die regte enstof gebruik, dat dit nie 'n skyn video is nie, dat die regte een is. En dit gaan ek vir die veeartse dan deurgee, en 'n opleidingsmodelletjie, met die merklys, en maar daai voorstel moet nog eers goedgekeur word, deur die staat. Op die oomblik sê hulle, nee, net 'n veearts en 'n tegnikus kan spuit, en dit kan nie so werk nie.
Is dit dan jou benadering en funksie van hier af uit, sien jy dan nou nie meer op die ministeriële taakspan is nie?
Ja, het gee my baie meer tyd nou. Ek het een baie spesifieke funksie wat ek met die veeartse uitvoer. En dis om seker te maak dat hulle databasis van hulle kliënte 100% in plek is. Wie is die boer, wat sy kontakbesonderhede, wat is die plaas se naam, hoeveel beeste het hy. Dis 'n ding wat nogal tyd vat. So, na gisterandse vergadering, almal wil hê iemand moet vir hulle name opgee en getalle opgee. Ek sê, my stelsel wat ek saam met die veeartse mee werk vir meer as 15 jaar, is daar vertroue. Daar's vertroue in die stelsel. Ek het nog nooit 'n veearts en sy kliënte se inligting met iemand gedeel wat onnodig is nie. Daar's vertroue. Binne in my stelsel te veearts 'n hele bladsy op die netwerk wat sy eie kliënte gelaai kan word. Ja, en dit gaan my hooffunksie wees om daai ding georganiseer te kry vir as die enstof hier is, dat ons dit reg kan doen, rekord hou, rekord kan teruggee vir die staat en kan monitor dat die enstof suksesvol is.
As boere en dalk ander veeartse wat nie op jou lys is nie meer wil weet, hoe kan hulle jou kontak?
As daar nie veearts was op my lys is nie, is dit ongewoon. Die kleiner veearts is nie daarop nie. Ja, my e-posadres is die maklikste wat ek sal gee onder al die ding. Op die oomblik kan ek nie by al die oproepe uitkom nie. As boere wil iets weet, praat met 'n plaaslike veearts. Hulle is die ouens wat my kontak. Anders sal ek nooit van my foon afkom nie.
Okay. Baie dankie Danie.
Dankie Dere.
Daar het julle dit was Dr. Danie Odendaal.
Plaas Media recently attended GRIMME Africa's branch opening in Cape Town. Karen Venter interviewed JP Smith and Philip Grimme to find out more about the company's history and their innovations.
Hi, my name is Philipp Grimme from Germany, born and raised in a small village called Damme, northwest part of Germany. This is where the heritage of the Grimme Landmaschinenfabrik, or we call it Grimme Group, took place in 1861. So I'm now the 5th generation of our family business. I do it together with my brother Christoph. He's also here today, and we always had that vision and that long-term perspective to be more present here in South Africa. Myself, I lived 5 years in Johannesburg, so I have also personal interest being here again in South Africa and do the next step for the factory. And then I met JP, sitting next to me, in 2014 on the show. Actually, he was founded by 2 of our employees in Dar es Salaam. That's correct?
Yes.
Yes. And so he became then our first local employee for GRIMME based in Cape Town. But at that time we hadn't any location, no office, no nothing, just him being the Lonely Ranger together with our partners here. We have good partners in South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe and so on. So, and then JP and myself, we worked closely together and we came up with this fantastic idea of now we have to do the next step. And so JP worked his ass off, I can't say different, over the last 14, 16 months to find the location, to find the right location, and what's the best area to be in South Africa, how we do this infrastructure. And over the years he developed this beautiful business plan, how we need to operate and what we need to do. But I think JP, it's better if you tell it yourself.
The core focus is to support our local dealers in sub-Saharan Africa. Currently we're trading and supporting 10 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and the need for backup and support in spare parts and technical services is quite large. Our market is very specialized and we can't afford any downtime. So to support our dealers in the countries and also to support the farmers that don't have dealers in the country, that was part of the business plan, to have backup support and spare parts. So yes, today is a very special day. It's an official launch. We have 120 guests throughout sub-Saharan Africa, from farmers to dealers. And just to say thank you to the farmers for the loyal support over the last few years. And yeah, we're all excited for the market, we're excited to support everyone, and we're excited to be here. So yes, thank you. That's us in a wrap.
100%. So outside we did, my dad is here especially for him. He is now very, very proud on all of us that we have this next step. My brother is here today, so most of the family, my mom wanted to come, but she unfortunately has
Somebody has to look after.
Somebody needs to stay in Germany and look after the headquarters. So all her boys are here, and now we're really excited for today. Absolutely excited.
And to our customers and to farmers, you're more than welcome to have a visit. We have training facilities, we have additional spare parts, we can introduce you to all our product range, product portfolio, and give you all the information that you need to be a successful potato grower.
I'm Conrad Schutte. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Vinpro Group. Today we are here at Danie. It is the 20th Vinpro production day, and we have more than 260 of our producers and members here today. The idea is to stand here in front of the bulk of harvest, share information, learn from each other. So we are very privileged to have an international speaker all the way from California to give us some of the trends that they see on the Californian side. And then we are also privileged to have other sectors in the agriculture, like ZZ2, that's sharing their information strategy in their business. And we had a really positive engagement, and we are looking forward to a positive harvest. Yes, so we have this production day every year in January, just before harvest. It's an important networking event. And if you would like to receive any information on Vinpro, please have a look at our website. All the information, registration forms are there, and we will welcome you as a member.
I had the opportunity to talk at the Vinpro Producers Day, and the theme of this year's event was technology. And then it just so happens that quite a bit of my research is in the field of technology. And the message that I wanted to convey today is that if you talk about technology, you need to talk about the long term. And then there are various examples of that. So we often, between something being conceptualized and being adopted, can take upwards to 50 or 100 years. And then what I wanted to stress is the importance of long-term planning and thinking, and that's especially so in the wine industry, where planting a vineyard is a 20-year commitment. And do we understand what the future market and consumer would actually look like? And and I think technology gives us the opportunity to better understand those markets, to better compete on the global stage.
Today, my name is Martin Janssen. I'm the CIO of the farming group ZZ2 and the managing director of a company called Think Ninjas, a specialist software development company that is in our group. I'm here at the 20th Vinpro Annual Producer Day, and I was invited to be a guest speaker here to talk about the impact of technology in our business and how it could translate into another sector such as the wine industry. And it's been a fascinating journey today with a whole other industry and the challenges that they face and the overlaps between the challenges that we have and the challenges that they have and the technological similarities that we could all bring to bear as South Africa, as a major industry in South Africa as well. To learn more about ZZ2, we can go to our website or our social media presence. Our products are available in most households. I think we're a household brand. and we're a well-known, well-represented brand in South Africa and abroad. It has been a fantastic day talking to other people in another sector and trying to find solutions that we could all bring to bear for South Africa's benefit. Amazing to take part in this day with a whole other industry, the wine industry. I think it's a beloved sector in South Africa. There's a lot of knowledge that's here and specific to South Africa, and it's so close to home, very much like our other products that we have. They find their ways into our homes. They find their way into our culture. So it's an amazing opportunity to just be part of the South African wine industry's important day.
Today I chatted about what producers can expect for the coming season, actually focusing retrospectively on what they're observing in terms of climate patterns, disease pressure, and everything that involves the quality and quantity of the upcoming grape harvest. The prospects for the upcoming harvest is very good. Grape health is looking fantastic. There's still ample of irrigation reserves in most wine growing regions. Some regions have limited water sources, but the quality is looking excellent.
We are kicking off today with a new segment on Plaas TV called Agronomics with Wandile Sihlobo. Wandile is well known for his role as Chief Economist of AgBiz, and he will join us each month in studio for this segment. Wandile, welcome and thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me on.
Let's start by talking about the agricultural relevance in the Davos conversations. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, so Davos is a gathering globally, which happens, it's called formally the World Economic Forum, and all of the major businesses across the world and the head of states, foreign ministers, finance ministers, they all gather there. And South Africa, as one of the key emerging markets, of course, it is represented there by both on the government side as well as on the business side. The core thing about Davos, the theme changes each year, but I think the core platform that it provides is for businesses and government across the world to be able to interact, not only on the formal themes that are there, but also the business opportunities that arise in each country. And if you are facing a friction on a particular country, you are able then now to have a much more greater access to their political leaders. So you can almost think of it as this gathering where there's information exchange as well as a sharing of the ideas. But for agriculture, then it is important because ultimately, as the South African agricultural sector, we are looking at widening export markets. And I think that being able to sit in a room, see all of the people that we are interested in expanding our exports to and talk to them, that brings that relevance of it in the South African agricultural sector.
And then moving to the agricultural trade policy, how is South Africa performing?
We've been able to do well as South Africa in terms of the agricultural exports. I mean, if I think back now, in year 2000, we were exporting about $2 billion worth of the agricultural products. 2025, we likely cross for the first time the $14 billion of agricultural export. And the nice thing about that is that our exports are also nicely diverse. We have nearly half of it in the African continent, about 20% in the EU, and of course Asia as well as the Middle East, about 24%, and then the rest is the Americas. But what we are looking at doing now is saying, how do we retain these export markets that we have, but at the same time be looking at widening our access to some of the new and growing markets? Because ultimately, for the South African agricultural sector to thrive, we have to ensure that we are able to have access to a number of export markets. Without export markets, we can't have a sector that is thriving as this. And by the way, this is not just for a particular value chain. It cuts across either you're on livestock or you are in fruit, wine or grain. You do want the export markets because that's really where we're getting a lot of value.
And then which new markets are we looking at?
In that spirit of the exports, I mean, we are now mapping up new areas because ultimately we are where we are, and we think that the South African agricultural sector could still grow by plus 30% in a gross value added. But that growth is not going to come, Dedra, without looking into a number of exports. Because I think one of the things we don't always appreciate is that in everything that we produce in South Africa today, about half of our products go to export markets. So if we're thinking about tilling new land, improving agricultural productivity, we will have to make sure that we have export markets for all of those products. And the new areas that we're looking at deepening our access to right now are the markets in the Middle East, are the markets in Asia. Just last year, 2025, for example, you saw that the president went with a number of ministers visiting the likes of Indonesia, Vietnam, and the likes. And the core thing there was placing agriculture on top of mind. But what is needed now are the African officials following up and making sure that we can strike trade deals, because through those trade deals, we'll be able then to produce and export more.
Are those officials following up?
They are following up, and I mean, I work with a couple of some of those people, and I think right now, though, this year, that's where the follow-up will need to be even much more stronger than it was in the past, because ultimately the world is changing. We've been talking about the trade friction that we see in the world, but also people are forming new alliances. I mean, just now in Switzerland, the Prime Minister of Canada last week, when we were there, he gave this important speech where he was talking about how the world is changing and what middle powers like South Africa should be doing in this environment, because we are facing friction in the US and they are driving their own agenda. But the core thing then is about other middle powers like ourselves, Australia and the others. How can we play a much more constructive role, both in mending relations with the US, but also deepening trade relations amongst ourselves as well as the other countries? And I think that's what we need to be doing now. And we do have an avenue of doing that as South Africa. One, within the BRICS countries, India and China are some of the important markets which we need to deepen our access to, in addition, of course, to the greater Middle East and Asia that I was talking about. So we are really in that space now of international trade dominating the environment that we're operating in.
Okay. Switching to a hot topic, biosecurity matters and the impact on agricultural exports. Talk to me about that.
I mean, look, when we're talking about exports, we are dealing in agriculture with biological products. So there's no way you can think about broadening your exports without thinking about biosecurity. We talk a lot right now about the foot and mouth disease, but biosecurity really encompasses animal health as well as plant health. We know that in the grain industry, for example, last year we struggled a little bit with what is called gorse wilt. Our friends in the citrus industry had struggled with the citrus black spot. There had been talks of a false codling moth. So a number of these things, we see them happening over and over. So if we are thinking about broadening our export markets, we have to make sure that on surveillance, as well as on the controls that we put in place in our commercial production system, they are intact. Because without the strong biosecurity system, we're not going to be able to achieve the export progress that we want in South Africa.
What role does animal welfare play in export systems?
I mean, that's something that many people have been raising, especially when we are trying to export live sheep out of the Eastern Cape to the Middle East, where people have said, hey, animal welfare. And you will remember some years ago, there was a ship that docked in Cape Town, which was coming from Brazil, and it made the whole city really unfavorable to be in there and smell what was coming up of the port. That was an issue for the Brazilians that were not handling well the animals. But I think South Africa, we've gone through a period where we have systems in place, which is why we continue with live exports to ensure that the handling of those animals, as well as the transportation of those ships, it's all meet certain standards so that animal welfare is prioritized in the process.
And the welfare of employees, do international companies look at how local companies treat their employees?
Yeah, I mean, they look at that. And in South Africa, we again have been on a spotlight of that. I remember back in 2012, when we had a big strike in the wine industry in Durance. And one of the key things was not only about the wages in the wine industry, it was an issue of a pay, but also an issue of the quality of work. And I think since then, there's been major improvements that have been made. To an extent now, when you look at the labor market in South Africa, we have roughly around 960,000 people that are working in primary agriculture, and we have about 350,000 people working in a value chain. So give or take, we have 1.3 million people that work directly in this sector. And for all of those people, over the years, there has been improvement in labor laws, there's been improvement in their housing for those that are living in the farms. So I think there's been all of those progresses. In addition to the domestic policies that have been put in place, their consumers in Europe, in Asia, and elsewhere, they pay attention to these things, because then if there are problems, then you see that they try to resist a particular product.
Back to biosecurity and foot and mouth. Talk to us about the developments and vaccination progress there.
I mean, look, South Africa has a difficult task ahead. We have about 12 million cattle that need to be vaccinated. Getting through that, one, sourcing sufficient vaccines, and two, making sure that we can handle all of that, because it's only about 7.2 million head of cattle that are actually in the commercial areas. The rest of that is in the township, former homelands. And if we want to get rid of the disease, we have to vaccinate everything, which is where I think then, in addition to what the feedlots and the others can do, the traditional leaders, the community leaders, need to do their own part on making sure that the control of the animal movements are in place. But also people like Minister Dean McPherson, the guys that are in the public works, on making sure that there is fencing in between the communities so that animals do not just move in any sort of way. So we need to revive that way where there was fencing. But ultimately the key thing in South Africa is about getting the right supply of the vaccines and then dealing with the logistics of managing that.
Do you have any insights as to how the payment and getting, procuring the vaccines will work? Because I mean, it's a state managed disease. They will have to get, despite Design Biologics being able to import vaccines, the Dolvet vaccines, Dunevax, Biotech, how will people, do you have any insights into that?
I mean, look, I'll say this, and I'm not sure if he has said it publicly, but he and I have had discussions about this. The DG of Agriculture, Ndate Mokitse Ramasori, and I have looked at the numbers. What I can say here is that the numbers will be plus 2 billion rands. That will be required for us to procure the vaccines. The state will lead that effort. There may be instances where the private sector also is able to buy the vaccines, but the program will be driven primarily by the state on the procurement, and they are well aware of the numbers that we need to ensure that.
But how will producers get it? Do they have to then buy it from the state?
No, the producers will not buy it from the state. The state will supply the vaccines. The state buys them from import, brings it in, and then the producers will be able to get
So whether it's a communal farmer, a commercial farmer, a stud farmer, he doesn't necessarily have to.
That's correct.
Okay.
But I will say this, and that I will say this. No, that's not the hope. That's the plan.
Okay.
And then what I will say, there may be instances where the commercial farmers may actually then be able to buy themselves some of the vaccine. But the plan is to ensure that we have plus 2 billion rands to actually make sure that the procurement happened. By them saying we now, I'm wearing my hat to the presidency, but that's the plan that is in place.
Thank you. And then, okay, moving away from F&D and biosecurity, what is the broad agricultural outlook for 2026 from an economic point of view?
I mean, look, we coming from a year 2025, which I would categorize it as being a mixed recovery in the sector. Because 2024 was a drought. 2025, we got the La Nina rains, and that led to an excellent harvest in grains. Grain production in South Africa was up by roughly 30% on a year-on-year basis. We had record soybeans, second largest maize harvest on record. So things went well on that. But even if you are talking to people that are in fruit as well as wine, it was double digit on a number of them. Our fruit exports were up 22%. So there's been that. So I would call it that the upside. But the downside of it was the fact that the livestock industry was already under pressure because of a foot and mouth disease. But looking at it broadly at a high level, I think for 2025, we're probably plus 8% improvement. Now you fast forward to this year, we've continued with good rains. I know that in Limpopo, they've struggled with heavy floods, but those heavy floods of January affected those that are in vegetables. But when we talk to people that are in fruit, large part of it is still relatively in good shape, to an extent that we don't believe that there will be a major dent at a national level on harvest. If anything, we see 2026 as actually a continuous year of momentum. If by June we are able to have gained momentum in terms of the cattle vaccination, then I think that this year we would see it as really powering on from the mixed recovery that we saw in 2025.
And then shifting focus again to the Southern African Customs Union and the challenges it presents to the South African agricultural export market development. Elaborate on that.
So, I mean, look, South Africa, we're part of the Customs Union. This comes back from 1910. Which is the SACU, the Southern African Customs Union. One of the key things of the Customs Union is that we don't impose tariffs amongst ourselves, but also when we go out to Asia, going out to Americas or anywhere to argue for export markets, we go as a group. Over time, this did serve us. I mean, if you look at our exports of agriculture to SACU countries, they are almost equal to what we export to the EU. But South Africa has reached a stage now where we want to move faster in terms of opening up the export markets. And I think that if we move with the SACU countries and coming back to negotiate every time, they actually proving to slow down South Africa. We do need then now to reform SACU to an extent that South Africa can have its flexibility to be able to look for export markets individually without a drag of the SACU countries. But at the same time, we don't want to be irresponsible in our continuing the relationship the way it is. That's the plan and that's the intention. We hope that the DTIC will be the one that is leading these efforts along with our friends at DERCO and really making sure that South Africa untangles itself here, but in a responsible way.
And then lastly, Wandile, talk to us about the La Niña rain's impact in the Southern African region.
I think the picture I was painting about South Africa as to where we are at the moment with excellent rains and excellent agricultural conditions is really what we are seeing when we talk to people in Zambia. We talk to people in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Tanzania. They are receiving as much of excellent rains as us. Our very hope then is that they were able to have sufficient seeds as well as the fertilizers, because ultimately we do need them to have a solid agricultural production this time around. We no longer have the US aid, which used to come in and provide food when it's needed. Southern Africa needs to actually do itself to produce. And I think that the La Niña rains provided at least a good basis for good production in the region.
Cool. Thank you so much, Wandile. I appreciate your time. That was Wandile Sihlobo in our first Agronomics segment of Plaas TV. Be sure to tune in again next month to hear what he has to say.